Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to transform your life and free yourself from mental pain, then do we have the Illumination Process show for you. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Alberto Villoldo, a trained psychologist and medical anthropologist who has studied the healing processes of the shaman and directs the Four Winds Center and is the founder of the Light Body School and is a multiple best-selling author and the author of a fascinating new book, The Illumination Process. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about the neuroscience of enlightenment and a shamanic guide to transforming toxic emotions into wisdom, power, and grace. That, plus we'll talk about fishing poles and parrotfish, shaving heads and changing names, survival of the most cooperative, what we can all learn from kabuki theater, and why in the world you've got to choose Naugahyde if you're gonna drive a Volvo. So welcome to the show, Alberto. Are you ready to shine?
Absolutely, Michael.
Thank you so much for being here and a mighty woohoo! So before we dive right into things, I want to go back into history just a little bit. Can you tell us where you first grew up and how you ended up in Miami?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that question the way you did, where I first grew up, because I'm still growing up. And this is one of the great things that we suffer from in the West, is that we stop growing up. We suddenly wake up one day and we've grown old and calcified, and our thinking is stuck, and we forget how to renew ourselves in our lives. So we keep gravitating to quick fixes and to this vitamin supplements that will repair our mitochondria or our telomeres, but we don't go back to the essential, which is our nature as light. We are light. We're made of light that is tightly bound into matter. And this is what I want to talk to you about today, is how do we renew that light? So that our light doesn't begin to get dimmer and dimmer every day, and we spend the next 10 years in therapy wondering why we cannot bound out of bed in the morning and greet the day like we did when we were in our teens. So without all the hormones, of course.
So how did you get interested in studying light?
Well, I'm a medical anthropologist by training. So I spent many years in the Amazon and in the Andes and throughout the Americas, actually, in the American Southwest as well, working with the shamans, with the wisdom keepers that are the ancestors of this land that we live in. And these were medicine men and women that had not been cast out of the Garden of Eden like we have in the West. Do you know that we're the only people in the world that were ever kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and nobody else was?
Sounds self-imposed.
Well, we were kind of born into it. I was dished that medicine when I was very, very young. So we were cast out of Eden. We were cast out of our families. We were cast out of our true nature. We don't belong anymore. So my quest began as a quest for self-healing. Who is my tribe? Where do I belong? Who are my people? And that led me to the Amazon. And in the Amazon, I discovered that I had taken on a cultural burden that was not mine. You know, I was never kicked out of the garden. That was a lie. And I believed it. I bought into it. God was not separated from creation. I remember as a young man learning the Lord's Prayer and learning, Our Father, who art not here, who art somewhere else. And no wonder there's so many absentee fathers in the world, in our world. So I had to deconstruct the Western psychology and mythology that I thought was real. And I discovered that it wasn't.
So you became the youngest clinical professor at San Francisco State University. You were doing studying in the biological self-regulation lab. How did you say there's got to be more here than meets the eye, and why did this become a burning desire to go down there?
Well, I had a brain research lab. So I was studying, we were slicing and dicing and staining the human brain and putting it under the microscope and looking for the mind. And after doing that for a couple of years, I discovered that I was looking out of the wrong end of the microscope. So I shut my lab down and I headed down to the Amazon rainforest to work with people that did not have MRIs. They did not have technology. All they had was the power of the mind to heal or to kill. And we know that we can create psychosomatic disease, but I was interested in how we create psychosomatic health. So I spent the next 20 years studying with the shamans in the Andes and eventually training to become one of the medicine people. Because it's contagious. You can't help yourself but to step into this ancient wisdom. But at first I was very arrogant. I was from the West, I had a PhD, and these people couldn't even read or write. So I thought I was superior in some way. And one day we're walking through the rainforest and with this medicine man and a medicine woman, and they said to me, we came to a clearing, and they said to me, Alberto, go ahead and walk across the clearing and see what happens. And I walked into the clearing and I entered the rainforest on the other side, and it was full of song. The macaws and the monkeys and the parrots. The first step, the second step, and then the third step I took, everything stopped. And the medicine woman and her husband came up behind me and said, see, they've stopped singing because they realized that you've been kicked out of the garden, that you don't belong here. And I said, come on. I might be from California, but these guys, I'm sure, were pulling my leg. I was convinced that the animals were smelling my deodorant and my toothpaste and my athlete's foot powder. And there were two Shipibo Indians right by the edge of the clearing on a river, and they had caught a boa, a snake that they were cooking on a spit. They were cooking their dinner. And they were collecting the boa fat in a can. And I went up to them and I asked them if I could have some of the fat. And I stripped down to my shorts and I started putting the boa fat all over my body. And they're looking at me a little bit strangely. And I said, it's okay, I'm an anthropologist. Because I was convinced that the animals in the rainforest were smelling me, Western me coming in. And the stuff reeks. It's really pretty awful. So I'm walking back through the rainforest, convinced that the parrots were going to smell another boa slithering back in to the jungle. And the first step, it was full of song, and the second step, and the third step, and then everything stopped again, except for about 600 flies that I had around me. And it wasn't until 10 years later that I was able to walk into the rainforest and have it continue singing around me, have it recognize me as someone who belonged in the earth. I had been looking for my people all along, and what I had to do was to shed this myth that I had been kicked out of the garden. And when I did, then I returned to the garden. Then I was able to do what we were able to do when we still lived in paradise. I could speak to God and to the rivers and to the trees, and they would talk back to me. And once I was able to do that, all of my Western psychology went right out the window. All the mommy issues and the daddy issues and the belonging issues and the rejection and all of it was healed because I made my way back into Eden. So that became my new reference point. I said, we're dealing with all of these dramas and traumas. Why don't we try making our way back to Eden, recognizing that we're all Aboriginal peoples. We're all children of Mother Earth. And the shamans had mastered the processes for doing this. So it was not just an idea, but this is how you do it. And it worked. And this is what the illumination process is about, the book that you held up, which is my new book on how to heal ourselves with light.
Woohoo! So I want to dive into all this. You are so speaking my language. As my wife, Jessica, the producer, and myself, we consider ourselves children of the earth, and we dance around on the earth, in the water, hugging the trees. So first off, as we go down this road, I'm too excited here. What is a luminous energy field?
Okay, so the luminous energy field is what we call the aura. Mm-hmm. So this is a field that envelops the physical body and that organizes the body in the same way that a magnet organizes iron filings on a piece of glass. Now, through medicine and surgery, we're interested in moving around the iron filings. But what if we were able to change the field to move the magnet? All of the iron filings, the body would follow. Mm-hmm. And this is what the shamans of old discovered, that they could upgrade the quality of their energy field and they would upgrade their body. They could literally grow a new body that aged and healed and died differently. They knew how to do this. And when I mention this to people, especially medical doctors, they say to me, how do you know that you can grow a new body? And I say to them, because it's been scientifically proven. They said, well, show me. I said, what do you mean show you? We know that you can grow a body because you did. So these instructions are in password protected regions of your DNA right now. And what the shamans of old discovered was to hack our biology so we would not only heal, but we would actually regenerate ourselves. We didn't have to get older in the traditional sense. We could retain our vitality, our youthfulness, our sense of humor, and not succumb to the illnesses of the West, to the dementias and the heart diseases and the cancers that plague us today.
Let's dive in there. Let's start with what is illumination?
So going back to the energy field, we have an energy field. Mm-hmm. It would be more accurate to say that your energy field has a body, because it's your energy field that creates your body. And once you die, you're going to continue as an energy field. Now, we don't remember the story of when in between our births, but if you did, you would recall that you were a luminous egg, a luminous being mm-hmm. that took on a body. And this is what will continue beyond death. So if you can upgrade the quality of the information in the energy field, you're going to be upgrading the health of the body. Not only that, you're not going to have to be born into the kind of parents that you were born into this time, because you're going to learn your lessons without suffering and without drama and without pain. You'll be able to lead a more enlightened life. But the information, everything that is encoded in your genetics is also in your energy field. Mm-hmm. And when you talk to a biologist, they tell you, you cannot change your genes. And it's true, you cannot change your genetics, but you can modify your genetic expression. We call this epigenetics, greater than genetics. We know that your diet and how you love and how you forgive and how you wake up in the morning and how you meditate, all of these modify your genetic expression. And we can also do this through the luminous energy field. And I'll give you a really powerful example of this. When I was studying in the Amazon, I also got to spend a little bit of time with the sorcerers. The sorcerers were not the healers. They were the people that could kill and hurt and harm at a distance. And the way that a sorcerer would harm someone was not by taking a rock and throwing it at someone. That's a little bit too crude. They would track inside the field. They would look at a person's energy field at a distance. And they would say, heart disease runs in their family. Or breast conditions. Their grandmother died of a breast condition. Let's switch that on. Let's put a little bit of energy into that information, into that imprint. And then their victim would die a month later from heart disease. So this is how powerfully the changes that you make in your field can affect your body for the better or for worse. Now in the West, of course, we're convinced that we can also do that, but we do it to ourselves. We're stressed out, stressful, triggered the genetics for heart disease. In the jungle, they're a little more sophisticated. They know that somebody can do that to you, and they don't have to be your ex-wife or your ex-husband. It can be simply somebody energetically trying to do harm. But by the same token, we can use the same procedures of upgrading the field with beautiful, divine, blessed, holy light, and that will create a beautiful, divine, blessed, holy, and healed body.
Thank you. So, and I want to get into the next thing I want to touch into is how we upgrade that. But what you're saying then, it's something that I was hearing over and over in the book really, is that the conditions and illness that we see is really just symptoms of a spiritual illness or of being kicked out of that Garden of Eden.
Absolutely. Now, well, we call what's in the field spiritual because it's energetic, but it's really not spiritual. It's simply information. Mm-hmm. You know, your DNA code is not spiritual. It's a bunch of information. It's what's in the hard disk in your computer. Simply because we cannot see it doesn't make it spiritual. What's spiritual is really the quality of the beauty and the heavenly attributes that allow you to create beauty and healing. But because it's in the invisible world, it doesn't make it good. In fact, that's a mistake that sometimes people make when they go to mediums, mm-hmm. and they get a communication from a spirit. And it could be a deceased relative. And if it's Uncle Harvey that's communicating with you, and Uncle Harvey was an idiot when he was alive, the fact that he's dead doesn't make him anything else but an idiot still.
Sorry, Harvey.
Harvey, you didn't cut it. So it is, spiritual information is very sublime, high mm-hmm. quality, very high-end wisdom. And we can use that wisdom to upgrade the quality of our personal energy field so we don't have to live out the illnesses that ran in our families and the way that our parents died and the way that they lived, so we can have more original lives.
Thank you. So let's talk about upgrading and how we begin to do this.
Well, you begin now. First, let me take you back, because the shamans I discovered understand that creation happened at 4 different levels. Okay. That the Great Spirit created the universe at 4 levels. And each level is one step closer to the pure light. Mm-hmm. And each level down is one step further and closer to pure matter. So it's the same difference between the fender of your automobile and a piece of software. A piece of software is 99% information and 1% matter. A fender is 99% matter and 1% information or light. So the closer you get to the physical, the more that you need to bring information in at a physical level through what you eat. You got to eat organic. You got to eat clean. You got to detoxify the body, get rid of the poisons. You've got to support your mitochondrial function. You've got to support your brain. The brain needs certain nutrients that we used to get from wild foods, including wild fish, and that today we can't get because everything is farm raised. So we're not getting necessarily the omega-3 fatty acids that the brain needs to upgrade. And if you cannot upgrade the brain, you're not going to be able to have the neural networks to allow you to experience an upgraded field, mm-hmm. to experience spirit. So at the fundamental physical level, eat clean. The second level was the level of the mind. We know the mind informs the body. The level of the mind, you've got to get rid of most of the beliefs that you inherited that are not true, that are lies, like the fact that we believe we were kicked out of the garden. It's a lie. We weren't. Because this is the best marketing scheme that I've heard of, which is that if you do what I tell you, mm-hmm. then in your next lifetime, you're going to get to be in heaven. But in this life, you got to build a cathedral for me or a pyramid. Got it? So, wow, what a great way to get free labor.
Good point.
So that's at the physical level. The level of mind, get rid of the beliefs that are not yours. And just about every belief that you have is truly not yours. So you get to the belief structures that are creative and positive mm-hmm. by reflecting on your experience. What's been my experience in the world? And particularly in your spiritual quest, what is true? Most everything that we have learned is the truth of others and not our truth, not our truth. So when you discover your truth, which is in your heart, then you don't have to live by the truths of others, which are the truths of history, which are generally pretty violent and pretty bizarre in so many ways. So this is at the level of mind. You got to clean the body, you got to clean the mind. At the level of the soul, we're much closer to the light. And what you do there is you need to come up with a sacred journey. What's your life plan? Which is not a business plan. Your life planner is, what did you come here to do? So that Mark Twain used to say that the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you discovered why. And this is what this realm of creation is about. Our journey here is to discover why we were born and then to put that into practice. And then everything just bursts right open for you. So that's the third level. And then at the fourth is at the level of pure energy. Energy is sustenance, is food. Food is energy, but energy at the very highest level is wisdom. So you want to surround yourself by wisdom, by beauty, and by wisdom. This is what's going to feed you at the deepest core of your being. So it's at these four levels that we upgrade the field. At the level of food, you cannot have a shamanic experience if you have a bunch of mercury in your mouth and your brain is full of mercury and your thyroid isn't working. So you've got to eat well, you've got to eat clean, you've got to exercise, you've got to forgive. And that begins to upgrade your field. And then energetically, what you do is you go to sacred places, to power places. And you learn to expand your field and fill it with the really sublime energies of Machu Picchu or of Lhasa or the great monasteries in Tibet. My wife and I just came back from a month in Nepal. In some ancient shamanic Buddhist monasteries where the energy of all the prayers that have been left there remains. Wow. But what we know is that we can upgrade the field. And the beauty of it is that when you buy a computer, and many of our I just bought a new Apple computer, and it gave me the option of to auto update my software, and I clicked on it. And it was so easy. Well, when you get to the higher levels, when your diet is clean and when you've gotten rid of the beliefs that you don't belong, that you're not a child of the earth, then you can get the auto update option. And your field is automatically updated by the changes that are happening in nature, by the eclipses, by the seasons, you get this information directly from nature. The hand of God, the hand of spirit is everywhere, and it acts through sunlight. And sunlight is actually the way, and the sunlight right now, the solar storms that we're experiencing from the sun contain the codes for a new human that's appearing on the earth. But in order to download those codes, you've got to run the antiviral software first. You got to get rid of the toxins in the body. You've got to upgrade the physical vessel so that you can become a container for that light.
Thank you.
Follow me?
Definitely following you. My wife and I spent some time on a kayak last week in South Carolina watching the totality of the eclipse. And we did it. We went into ceremony on an island beforehand with prayer and intention, and then sat back on the water, miles of water and no one around us. And the clouds parted, and there's something that I don't even know how to put into words. When night becomes day and the sun becomes black and then golden light beams out from behind a black sun, that just, I don't even know if the right word is, changes your perspective. It is, I guess you would call it an upgrade. It's a complete, you realize just how much is beyond the veil. It's like seeing to the other side. It's like seeing into the equipment.
Yeah, yeah. The totally. And it's and for all people who were able to enjoy that eclipse, it was fantastic. And even, we don't have to wait for 68 years for the next download. The next big eclipse is coming in 2064. We can do it every night that we go outside and look at the stars. We can do it in the morning when we catch the first rays of the sun. And we can even do it when we light a candle, because the nature of that energy of creation is light. And wherever there's light, that energy is present. And this is what differentiates the shamanic teachings from the religious teachings. Religion tells you, I am present when you pray to me. Your God comes when you summon him or her. The shaman says every time you light a fire, you are kindling, you're calling the very forces that were present when the Big Bang happened.
What do we do with that light? Let's say we want to do something with a light, or we want to do something with any of those scenarios. Light, stars, sun in the morning. How do we call that in? How do we use that?
Well, basically, again, at the level of the body, your body knows how to do it really well. You go out and you're getting vitamin D. Take your shirt off. Go and get some vitamin D. Expose your face to the sun. And vitamin D is the key operating mechanism here at a physical level. Most everyone in America and in the world is vitamin D3 deficient. And this is what the body manufactures when it's exposed to light. When you increase your uptake of vitamin D3, you can go outside and you can transform that light into beautiful wisdom and information. So that step number one is let your body do what it does naturally. Mm-hmm. And step number two, if you want to get these downloads, you've got to go into meditation. You've got to still the mind. You cannot be going through your to-do list or answering emails in your head while you're out there meditating with the rising sun. You've got to witness it. Imagine if you've been watching that eclipse from your kayak and you'd been on the cell phone or texting a friend. Come on, be present, show up, quiet the mind, and let the magic happen. The body knows how to do it. A body knows how to photosynthesize in a very, very unique way.
As crazy as it sounds, and it won't sound crazy to you, but after my second near-death experience was living in Maui, up on a hillside, up on the side of Haleakala, the volcano there. And each morning I would say, I'm going outside to get my vitamins. And I would go out just before the sun came up, and I would gaze until that sun had just come up over the horizon. And I'd be like, good, I've gotten my vitamins for the day.
You did. And that's the only time that you can look at the sun directly. It's right as it's coming up or as it's setting. But when it's rising, it's pristine. It's waking up the world. And that energy is going right in through your optic nerve, through your eyes, your optic nerve, into your brain and into your nervous system, and upgrading the quality of the system.
Beautiful. So let's talk about, in your book specifically, I want to talk about initiation as illumination. What does that mean?
So say that again, repeat that again, because you're asking me a really big question. What are you asking me?
I'm asking you talk about one of the main theories that one of the main points in healing here that you're talking about in your book is initiation as illumination, of how we can use the initiation process to, I guess, upgrade us, upgrade our life, or at least get out of our minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, part of what happens during your initiation is that you lose your mind and you come to your senses. So we still the mind. The mind is this amazing, the mind is mad. And it's this biological experiment. We're part of a great biological experiment. In a few generations, nature is going to dispense with the mind altogether. So we don't have to be possessed by this chattering mind that is always attached to gibberish. what happens is, logic and reasoning is fantastic, but the chattering mind is a problem in every spiritual tradition. So initiation typically faces you with death.
Mm-hmm.
And you've had near-death experiences twice. You've had an opportunity for a great initiation. Many people that have a near-death experience are simply happy to be alive, but they're deeply touched. The ones that really have embodied it, embraced it, their lives have been changed forever. Whether this near-death experience happened in an accident, an operating table, but also many of us have been initiated by simply becoming aware of how fragile life is, of how death is really our constant companion, mm-hmm. and not been terrified by that, not run away by that understanding, but inviting death, saying, "Here, sit next to me. Let's have a cup of tea together." Not running away from this, because death is part of life. It's in life. And when you sit with death, when it becomes your ally, then you can appreciate the fact that everything lasts only for a moment. That flower that blooms only for one day. There are butterflies that only live one day. Imagine if they get a rainy day. They really lucked out. Sorry, guys, you get rain today. But they have a life, a wet life, but it's an amazing life. When you look at a flower, you don't think it's going to be gone later today. When you look at a young man or a young woman, you don't go, well, soon enough they'll be old. No, you appreciate the temporalness of everything, that everything is fleeting, everything is passing. And it's in that you get your initiation into wisdom, into appreciating every breath and every moment. And so you don't need to butt up against an automobile accident to wake up to this. So this is how we can take these moments of initiation and turn them into these moments of encountering death in our lives, the loss of a loved one, of a pet, of somebody we care for, of an age, an era in your life, and saying, yes, I accept this as a gift from Spirit. But that takes a lot of courage.
I've always said that life would be better if we had an expiration date, if we lived like a loaf of bread and we had an expiration date on our forehead so that we knew how long we are and how precious each moment is. How do we die while we're still alive?
This is the problem with our foods today, is that we have a date of manufacture, but we don't know when they go bad. And also, a lot of people go bad before their expiration date, because they haven't been well preserved. So the being old doesn't make you wise. It just makes you old. And there's a lot of angry old people there. And there's a lot of really wise young people. So my wife and I were at a restaurant not too long ago, and we went there early, and there was a couple having dinner a few tables away from us. And when you go to a restaurant, you always check out who's there, and this couple were in their 90s, and they weren't talking to each other, and we were looking at them, and they were eating, and at one point the man says to the woman, "Pass the salt," and we could hear the tone of his voice, and we could read between the lines, and he's going, "Pass the salt, wench, you've ruined my life." And she did, and you could tell that they had become intimate enemies. This is, my God, and in order to keep things fresh in our lives, we have to keep dying and being reborn, particularly with relationships. We have to let the parts of the relationship that are no longer functional of ourselves, slough off the dead skin, let that self die so you can be reborn in this life, so your relationship can be renewed. Otherwise, you become an angry old man or an angry old woman, and you end up with a relationship with an intimate enemy. So death is the greatest renewing force in nature. And when you understand that there's a continuity to life, not because you've read about it, but because you've experienced it, as you have, and I have, and many of us have who are listening to the show, then death becomes your friend, becomes a renewing force, and not the terminal force.
So if a lot of people who are listening to the show, and I do a tremendous amount of coaching, and it's one of the biggest challenges that people come with, is we're too attached to our quote problems. That's just how I am. I can't change that. How can I get out of this situation? We are married to who we are, and we're unwilling to let that go. How do we begin to die to that to allow an upgrade to take place?
So, have you been saving all the difficult questions for me, or do you always ask all your guests these? So it really is pretty straightforward. It's really pretty simple. The because in life you either get what you want or get the reasons why you can't. So you know that. We know that. But we become so attached to all the reasons why I cannot have what I want or what I deserve that we lose the ability to create. I remember, I'm the son of immigrants. We immigrated to this country when I was a young boy, and we were very poor. And I knew that people wrote books because I read books, but I never thought that I could write a book because that's what other people did. That's what people born in this country did. I could barely speak English properly. And today I've written 17 books, to this. But what happened is that I had to shatter that belief that others wrote books, but I could not. So this comes down to the set of beliefs that you have, and our beliefs are unconscious. So if you want to have a sense of what your beliefs are, and they are the unconscious programming, you need to look at your life, at the printout, right? And then you get a sense of what the underlying beliefs are. And remember that none of them are real, are true. They're real, but they're not true. And the shaman
What does that mean?
Well, the shaman differentiates between that. Is that it's real because you believe it to be real, but it's not true. I'll give you an example. I had what I do today is I train Western shamans through our school, the Four Winds Society. We train people to heal through the luminous energy field, through the illumination process. And one of our students was a 37-year-old woman who was convinced that she had been abandoned by her mother and father when she was very young. And she spent 10 years in therapy, and then she went to a hypnotherapist. They did a regression and discovered that when she was 18 months old, she had been abandoned by her mother and father. And her father had passed away. Her mother was in a convalescent home. And she went to her mother and said, "Mom, how could you have left me when I was 18 months old?" And her mother said, "Leave you?" She said, "Yes, you left me." And the mother thought and thought, and she said, "Oh, when you were 18 months old, you had been a very colicky baby, and your dad and I left you with your grandmother, with my mother, and your grandma held you and slept with you, and we went off for a week's vacation. And you cried the entire time that we were gone." So in the brain of this 18-month-old saw mommy and daddy leaving and never coming back, which was real for her. But in reality, the truth is they just needed a little bit of sleep. So the fact that it's real for you doesn't mean that it's true. It simply means that that's a story or a belief structure that operates within you. And the minute that you begin to observe these, they show themselves what they truly are, which is that they're not true. Now, the way the shaman approaches it is by clearing those belief structures, the energy from these stories, clearing them from the field. And then you go, wow, you mean I can write a better story for myself? You mean that the fact that I had to fend for myself when I was little made me stronger? Instead of being an excuse why I cannot write a book or have a good relationship. So here are functional keys that we can use to experience greater health, to overcome obstacles, and most important, to be able to contribute to the world in some way. Because until we take up that mandate that we were all born with, to make a difference in the world, we're not going to be complete.
I'm going to come back around and double right back around to that. But there's a technique you mentioned in your book, kind of a way that we can separate from maybe who we are, unplug from ourselves to unplug from our story. It's something you talk about called engaging in a spirit flight and disconnecting from our chakras. Could you share about that briefly?
Yeah, basically, remember that you are an energy field.
Mm-hmm.
The big debate in physics 100 years ago was whether the electron was a particle or a field or a wave. And it had to be one of the two. And then they discovered that it was both. It had a particle state and it had a field state. And when you measured it, it became a particle. And then it would return to being a field. Well, we also have a field state and a particle state. And today we are in our particle state. We're in a body, but we still have a field. Mm-hmm. And when you die, you're going to be returning to your field state. Now, in a particle state, you cannot have both of us occupy the same chair, or one of us is going to be pretty upset. But in a field state, fields can occupy the same space because they don't occupy any space. So that today we know who we are because we are someone somewhere in this body. And for the shaman, the question became, will you know who you are when you are someone who is everywhere? Because the field is everywhere. So the training of the shaman had to do with taking your awareness with you beyond death, to understand that you were primarily a field that was everywhere, that had a body. You're not a body that has a field, you're a field that has a body. And this body will pass on and you will return to your field, and you want to take your consciousness with you. So this exercise that you mentioned is a very powerful exercise, because what connects the field to the physical body are the chakras. They're the rivet points. And if you can unwind those rivet points, you can actually lift the person's field, and they learn the spirit flight, the out-of-body experience. And then they return back into their physical body. But it has to be done in a very careful setting. And that reminds you of who you were before you were born, which was the field, and who you will be after you die. You come back with a tremendous sense of joy because you know that you're not a body only. And it was part of the shaman's training. We train our students in this practice as one of the practices, primarily because it wipes out the fear of death. Death suddenly is not something to be afraid of. It's a lot more difficult to be born than to die. We did the hard part already.
So doubling. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So doubling back around to where we were a minute ago then, and I appreciate you sharing about that. One of the big fears isn't just a fear of death, it's a fear of not living while I'm alive, not knowing what my purpose is, why I'm here. You just said that we get to find that and then go with that with all the gusto that we have. How do we begin to discover our purpose then?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because we're all dealing with that one, and it's the shaman is fundamentally an explorer. So we're explorers of consciousness, and and when we were coming out to the Americas, there were two kinds of people in the world. There were the farmers, and then there were the explorers. The farmers worked the land, the explorers got on a ship and hoped that they didn't fall off the edge of the world, because the world was flat back then. So they didn't have the maps that would bring them to America or to Canada or to the Northwest Passage. They got on a ship and they explored. They felt a calling. And we cannot wait until we have a set of clear-cut directions as to what our destiny and our mission and our purpose is before we set off on it. We have to listen to the calling and we have to say yes. Instead of give me more information, show me the map. What guarantees do I have? My children are too little, and I don't have enough money in the bank, and I haven't had a good night's sleep, or I haven't finished the New York Times crossword puzzle, so I cannot say yes to spirit yet. Well, the task and what I encourage my students to do is to live in a state of yes, is to leave port, is to embark on the journey. And the wind will guide you. Your destiny, your purpose will be revealed to you as you do it. So don't require that spirit give you the complete takeoff and landing instructions before you put on your seatbelt. So you've got to go, and that's how you discover it. And I want to share with you one of the legends just before we close. There's a legend that the shamans have. They say that before we were born, that all of us were gathered in a great green field, and this very big angel came out and said, this is going to be a very challenging time for the earth. It's going to be a very, very difficult time. There's going to be war. There's going to be famine. There's going to be climate change. There's going to be species extinction events. There's going to be rap music. It's going to be a very challenging time. Who wants to come? We need healers. Who wants to come? And we all volunteered. We all raised our hands. We wanted to be part of the solution. We didn't want to be part of the problem. We came here to start a revolution and to be part of a revolution. And now the status quo and the powers that be want to squash that, because the revolution is going to be upsetting many of the economic and social and healthcare and relationship models that we have. And that's very threatening to many of the other powers present in this world. But we came here to start a revolution in consciousness, not to spend another year in therapy. So let's get on with it. The time is now, and the calling is so clear. And all that it requires is a yes on our part. And the spirit guides you.
Woohoo! So Jessica, my wife, producer, she always wants to ask for the end, as part of our wrap up, a question for parents and their kids. What would you tell parents to help their kids today?
What would I tell parents to help their kids is to take them out into nature. Put the tablet, the digital device away for a few hours a day. Go out into nature, go walk, listen to the birds, look for the frogs. The frogs are the canaries of the planet. And when you find one, ask it what's happening in the earth. Speak to the trees and the rivers. Take them out into nature. That's so important, because there's a big revolution happening today. We're going digital so quickly that in 20 or 30 years, we're all going to be living up in the cloud. And maybe we'll transcend this human form and existence, but I think that it's so precious to live in our natural selves and in nature. What I do with my kids, I take them out every day. Even though they're grown now. They're grown now. The youngest one is 18. But we go out every day and we try to find something new that we didn't find yesterday. It's a game we've played for 15 years, but they still love it. Yesterday we found a nest, a hummingbird nest that we had never seen before.
Beautiful. So what homework assignment would you give? And maybe it's the same one. I always want to put my coach's hat on my guest and say, give us one assignment we can take away from here. What one homework assignment would you give people today?
Well, you held up my book at the beginning of the show, and the book is called Illumination. It's the illumination process, which is the shaman's guide, how shamans transform trauma, pain, suffering into power and wisdom. In this book, it's very practical. The reason I wrote it is to help the reader be able to transform, upgrade the quality of their field, to really experience love and become love, and bring beauty and into their world and into the world. And I encourage us to do that, to walk with beauty and to upgrade the quality of our field. Eat well, Throw out anything that has sugar in your pantry, throw it out. Change your beliefs, cultivate positive belief structure, come up with a sacred map for your journey, and then every morning go out, watch the sunrise. Download the
Woohoo!
codes. Thank you, Michael. Blessings to all.
URL, where can people go to get your book?
You can go to our website, the4winds.com, and it's got a lot of free information about the detox diet, the shaman's diet, the4winds.com.
Thank you so much, Alberto. It's been great
Thank
having
you.
you on the show. Thank you so, so much.
Thank
For
you.
everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the illumination process, and begin transforming your emotions and your life today, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Blessings to you.
Blessings to you as well. Be well on the journey.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!